All right, here we go again. Welcome back to the AmeriCorps Connections podcast during the month of April, which is, I'm considering it Earth Month, even though I think we should have Earth Day every single moment of every single day because this is the planet that we live on. So I'm so excited to be here with another AmeriCorps alumni who has a very interesting story of where they started to where they ended up and what they're doing now. So I'm really excited to have Angie Pollema on the podcast. I did practice several times. Before we get started, my name's Nikki Fiacco, and I am the founder of the AmeriCorps Connections podcast and all things that are connected to it. And I decided this month that I wanted to bring AmeriCorps members together who served in the environmental field and may still be in that field or doing something completely different, just so we can show the different paths of where AmeriCorps can take you. And I'm just really hoping that through these conversations, some of you are inspired to get more connected to the planet or do some work in the environmental field or plant a tree or plant flowers or set up a bee garden or something. Again, through these conversations, I'm just really hoping to spark some interest. And again, as always, as AmeriCorps alumni, we are a million point two strong. So I'm also hoping through these conversations, you realize or find out that you're close to somebody who's being interviewed on this podcast and you start connecting with one another. And we really start to make a ripple effect of the shared experience that we had through national service. So with no further ado, Angie, I would love if you could give us a reflection on how you got into AmeriCorps, when you served and what your program looked like, and then we'll see where the road takes us from there.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nikki. I'm very excited to be here. I served in the 2012 to 2013 Michigan Foreclosure Prevention Corps, which is a branch of the state and national. Our service term focused on preventing foreclosures. Especially at the time, 2008, and around the time I served, I'm sure nationwide, but especially Michigan, a lot of people were feeling the crunch of the financial crisis, and a lot of folks across state were in jeopardy of losing their homes. In Michigan, primarily, so much of the industry is focused around car manufacture. It really ripples down to so many folks across the state. That was our primary industry. And I think with a lot of the downfall of manufacturing, or just how finances change, right? After 2008, a lot of people found themselves struggling to pay their mortgages, or realizing, as we know, the banks were writing a lot of mortgages that people couldn't pay. There are a lot of balloon mortgages, that kind of stuff. There were, I don't even know how many. There were a lot of folks in the Michigan Prevention Foreclosure Corps across the entire state, from, Detroit all the way up to the UP. So I ended up getting very close with all the term members across the state. I'm not sure if all the state corps function like this, but our program director, did a really good job of creating space for us to constantly be on webinars together, be in chats, meet up in various parts of the state so we could get to know each other and share the struggles of our term. I know we talked about this on the pre-interview, but it ended up being a very stressful service year. I had a lot of people crying on the phone to me at my site, days away from getting kicked out of their home, the homes they raised their children, their grandchildren. A lot of multi-generational families, immigrant families who, English wasn't their first language, and there was a big language barrier, and the feeling of trying to explain, you have already filed for bankruptcy and your payments have ballooned to thousands of dollars a month. It was very heartbreaking. I grew up in Michigan, so it was my site was actually in the city I grew up in, right? So a lot of these folks were, not that I knew them, but I could see my friends' parents, them, my family. So it was very personal. But overall, it was a struggle. AmeriCorps is not for the faint of heart. I think it was a great year. I feel like me and my team did a lot of really great work, and there's so many programs, at least in the state of Michigan, that exist to help folks stay in their home. And I don't think there's not enough word to get that's out, that people know that there's a lot of resources. And I also did a lot of extracurriculars in my term, where we hosted Be a Money Smarty Day, where we helped people learn more financial literacy. And to your point with it being Earth Month, I did participate in my national service days, planting trees, cleaning up my neighborhoods, that kind of stuff. So, I think overall it was a great time to serve. I was at a crossroads in my career. And it was a really good pivot point for me.
Yeah. So many things that you just said, just to unpack. And it's so true that a service year can really, it can really open up your eyes. I think you had mentioned you had just come out of college. So this was a lot of hands-on experience. And while university experiences and college experiences are moving into the tangible, getting out there into the community and doing community engagement, AmeriCorps really just kind of throws you in. It's like that lake behind us. It was like we were all just kind of thrown in, and it's like swim. But I also think something that you had mentioned, that you could see your neighbors, you could see your family and these folks. And I think that a service year can really do that, where you can link to the humanity of other people, whether you're working in an environmental program or in a social services program, in which you are. And I mean, to double back about it being about Earth Month, people are like, well, keeping people in homes. Well, yeah, when people are out of their homes, they're pulling on resources from the state that has a backlash effect with what is actually going on in our environment. But also, I just think, so after your service year, what was it kind of like? Was there an aha sort of moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to take this experience and I'm going to intentionally go to my next opportunity when you finish? And before you answer that question, I just wanted to say that for those folks that don't know how to talk with your hand, if you're not from Michigan, if you could show us, where is the UP? It's up here, right?
Yeah.
Maybe my hand's backwards.
It's so funny. I don't know if this is backwards. So this is Michigan, this is the Lower Peninsula. I'm from Grand Rapids here. Detroit's here. UP's up here. So, no, it's a big state. In traversing.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and good on your program director and manager to bring you all together, because that's really super important. When I was serving at Volunteer Maryland, we were brought together for service projects. And sometimes, just like you said, I remember we had a picnic on the Chesapeake Bay, and, we kind of did service project, but it was really an exhale for us all to, reflect on what we were doing with our programs and figure out where we're going next. So what was your next opportunity after the foreclosure corps? And what did you intentionally, because I've just now started being intentional with my career, because it kind of is like, go over here, go over there.
Yeah, of course. So for the folks listening at home, I actually have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in film production and one in creative writing. I had entered college in Michigan always with the intention of moving out of state. I work in the television and film industry now. That has been a goal of mine since I was in middle school. So that was always the intention. But I also come from a very strong service background, a service community. I went to school and high school in Grand Rapids, where my term site was, and my school had a pretty strong service background. We had to do service hours. I did probably over 100 service hours in high school at the site that ended up being my AmeriCorps site, which was just like a really great like kismet situation. So after I graduated Grand Valley State University with my film background, I did a lot of internships while there, did a lot of production assisting on set. I also worked. I was one of those folks. At the time I graduated, which was 2010, the Michigan film industry was pretty new. I did a lot of work on movies and TV, a lot of PAing. I also had multiple jobs. But around the time I decided to make a change to do AmeriCorps, we had just gotten a new governor, and the governor did not feel like film incentives in the film industry was good for the state, which was a mistake. But I had, because I always had a relationship with service and putting time in my community, I had always had a heart for service and wanting to do Peace Corps. Because I don't have a social work background, and, you know, I knew that applying to the Peace Corps I would not look like a great candidate because I have a film degree. I actually, at the time, right before I had applied to AmeriCorps, I was working at Michigan State University's College of Human Medicine in Grand Rapids, and I became friends with a lot of the med students while I was there. One of the med students, prior to starting med school, she had done AmeriCorps in California, in Los Angeles, which is where I live now. And she and I had kind of talked about it. I was like, that's actually really great. That feels much more in line to being a good stepping stone for my life goals, because I knew I wanted to move to Los Angeles. I knew I wanted to work in movies, but I still wanted to take some time for service. But I didn't want to commit to 2 years abroad. Like I love Michigan. I wanted to invest in my home. So it really ended up being such a great, turning point, because I knew I couldn't stay in Michigan and keep working on films, and I needed to save some money to move out to LA. So it was really great. When I started looking around, I realized that, my term site, which I had already volunteered over the years at, they had an opening. I actually had already been volunteering at my site when one of the folks who helped manage me, she said, "Hey, I know you want to do AmeriCorps. We're actually having an opening. I would totally recommend you." And it's so interesting how these things work, or how, I don't know, fate or whatever you want to call it works, because I was not the first choice after I interviewed at my site, right? Because I don't have a social service background. So many of the folks that I see, I'm sure you see typically, who get accepted in AmeriCorps have like, social working or that kind of stuff, right? And at that point, my educational background did not on paper, I did not look like someone who could stop. But
and that's like that right there is just such another example of how national service can be for everybody. Like everybody can find their place, even if it doesn't look like somebody who's going to be working in social services or the social services industry might not be trained, but that's what AmeriCorps does, because they don't just throw you in and say, go do the thing. You get trained to do the thing, and then you get the experience. And so folks that are listening that are maybe interested in a service year, but don't even know how to start, just apply, and just see what happens. Apply for a couple programs, and see where you end up. I know this is heavy recruitment season for most AmeriCorps programs across the country. So I will definitely drop in some links if people are so inspired by Angie's words and they're like, I can do this. So I totally interrupted, but you're good. Got into the site.
Point, I just wanted to say that, like, I think your soft skills are way more valuable than your hard skills. You can always be trained how to answer a phone call, and you have to get trained in your certifications. I obviously didn't know anything about foreclosures or home ownership. That you can be trained on, but I think the ability, for me, at that point, I had, all through high school and college, I worked in a restaurant. So I had interpersonal skills, right?
Oh yeah.
So that I came in with those kind of skills, those people skills, or working on a film set where you need to have collaboration. You're working 12-hour days with people. You need to be able to focus on teamwork and prioritize the overall goal. So I did come in, I had those skills. The person they had offered the position to had ended up turning it down, so it went to me, and I wanted to point that out because, especially for the young listeners, it's okay if you're not first pick. Sometimes you're meant to be in a place. Like, don't let that kind of stuff discourage you, because I loved my service year. It was incredibly challenging, but I am so thankful for it. And I think, to your point, yeah, you learn a lot. Like, I wouldn't say my skills in understanding the foreclosure process helped my film career in any way.
Right.
But, it was a hard year, and it learning, how to, I think, work-life balance, or processing our emotions, or understanding, like, I need to make the money on my SNAP card work for me this month.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of stuff.
Budgeting.
Yes, those are the real skills you're learning.
Yeah. And so when we chatted before, we planned the video, the recording, and I said this before we started, I told you I was going to say it. You wouldn't think that somebody would say AmeriCorps was boot camp for the film industry or the entertainment industry. But you heard it here for the first time on the AmeriCorps Connections from Angie. So let's go from your journey from AmeriCorps to how you got to what you're doing now. So you obviously moved out in LA because you are in LA. And I was so excited. Angie actually reached out. I think we connected on LinkedIn. And when I saw that you worked for the company that you're working for, which I'll let you spill the beans, I was like, wait, I've got to know, like, this journey on how you got from serving in AmeriCorps in Michigan, mind you, out to LA to what you're doing now. So let's take that journey.
Sure, of course. So as I said, I did study film in college. So that was always the goal. And I've also said that I had a really great program director who really took the time to understand all of us, all the skill sets we were bringing to the overall foreclosure corps. So she kind of pushed my site, to her credit, to say, hey, Angie has video skills. How can you use that? So actually, during my service term, I shot a lot of stuff. Like, we had, budgeting classes, like get out of debt classes at my site. I filmed those classes, and like we made little videos. And then my actual site, like, director, my manager, when my service term was ending, she recommended me to shoot a video for another nonprofit in Grand Rapids. So that ended up being great because they paid me and I used that to help me move me to LA, because I knew that was my next step. Once my term got done, I knew about, probably about 3 months to the end of my service term, I knew, like, for sure this is happening. I ended up moving maybe 6 months after my term ended because I had to get stuff together and lined up. But yeah, so I moved out to Los Angeles to pursue film and television. Started working. I got, really lucky. Timing worked out. Because I already had a lot of experience working on movies in Michigan and just like a general professional background. I done video stuff in sports, and a year at a nonprofit, they just looks responsible.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way to describe it, right? I mean, I will say, a lot of people have never heard of AmeriCorps, or that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to open doors for you, depending on what it is. But having a year at a company, at a nonprofit, still looked really good. So I was able to, I got into a production company, worked my way around Hollywood, I guess. I worked at Disney. I worked at NBC Universal. I work at Netflix now. I also freelance. I'm a writer director. So yeah, I'm all over the place, but I know we talked about this. It's not glamorous. Movies and TV are not glamorous. You are working 12, 16-hour days. You driving in Los Angeles is a mess.
Part of your 12 to 16-hour day.
That's above that. When you're on
Oh,
set, you're there for, your call time could be 7 a.m. and you're going home at like 10 p.m. sometimes.
Wow.
So, but all that to say is work-life balance is a hard thing to work on, right? But that is definitely something I also had to work on while I was in AmeriCorps. When I served, I was working 40 hours a week at my site. I also had a 20-hour-a-week job on top of that. And I was couch surfing for sure for the first like few months. I didn't have an address at the time. I was couch surfing on people's couches, staying with different family members until I got settled. So it was such a time of upheaval for me. So, I all that to say is like the chaos of that time of my life definitely helped me, I think, jump in with both feet when I moved to LA and get jobs, and networking is huge, and my work ended up speaking for itself. I have gotten pretty lucky. I mean, I worked through the pandemic and all that good stuff here at Netflix, and I'm still
we were watching a lot of Netflix.
Yeah.
So I think I even upgraded my subscription to get more bandwidth or something. And I was like, okay, we need more of this. I wanted to just point out also how during a service year, while we are recruited to do a specific role in a community, yours was helping people with foreclosure and working and navigating through that system. If we're at a good site, right, and we are with good people that are able to allow us to, kind of check out try out our skills, how wonderful was it for you to not only spend a service year of learning new skills and getting to know people and serving, but also getting connected to create a portfolio that could take you and that probably wasn't even on your mind. You didn't take the AmeriCorps job because you're like, well, I'm going to spend this year putting together a portfolio. You were like, no, I'm going to serve at AmeriCorps and see where it goes from there. So yet again, I mean, you're just blowing our mind with all these perfect little nuggets. A service year can really give you an opportunity, if you keep your mind open, of, oh, how can I bring in the skills of what I actually think I want to do with my life, and kind of try it out here during my service year. So with your work at Netflix, when are we releasing the AmeriCorps series? No, I'm just kidding. What is some work that we could maybe relate to for us Netflixers? I won't even try to do that word. What are some of the things that you work on that we would be like, oh, she's an AmeriCorps alum, I know who produced that?
Nothing. I work on it's hard to describe what I work on here at Netflix. Basically it's stuff that you don't see. But I did just release a web series that I directed, and that's on YouTube. That can be watched pretty easily. But the Netflix stuff is hard to quantify because I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I did spend like 3 years at E and worked the red carpets for all the award shows and that kind of good stuff. So that was probably an easier thing to point people out to, but I did not work the award shows this year. When I was at ABC, I worked on a lot of the big budget like the promotional trailers and stuff to promote the shows. So, it's interesting that you talked earlier about being intentional about your career, because I think, I come from a very blue collar family, back in Michigan, true, Midwestern people. So I didn't have, I didn't move out to LA with my parents paying for my apartment. Like that was
Right.
the thing, like the money, like I had to work a second job when I was in AmeriCorps to pay my bills. And, I think the scrappiness of that has not ever left me.
Mhm.
In a lot of cases, I did have to like move from job to job in LA because those were what pay my rent, and LA is much more expensive than Michigan. But I think it's still always, obviously at the end of the day, I have to take a job. Like I can't pick and choose, but I think taking the time to know what my values are and like what kind of projects I want to work in, which I do think applying for AmeriCorps and sitting down going, okay, yeah, I do care about my community. I want to take this time. I mean, I don't think anyone joins AmeriCorps thinking they're going to get rich, right? Like you're getting paid like $3 an hour or something.
It's a little bit more now. The current administration and the network is working on getting it to 15 an hour, so that at least it's getting back up to minimum wage. There are some barriers with that because there's a cost share with the program. So we're in this moment in the network, in the AmeriCorps network, of making a service year attainable and accessible for more people, because it's just it's so transformative, but it's so limited because of just what you said,
Yes.
what you're making. I mean, I had another income coming into my house, so it was actually the perfect magic number to not move us into a different tax bracket. But the majority of people who could benefit from an AmeriCorps experience just doesn't have that experience. So, that is a true barrier to national service, which everybody in the industry is working on eliminating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things. Luckily, at the time that I joined AmeriCorps, I was still making very little money.
Right.
So, I mean, I still had to have that second job, but yeah, it's very similar to, I think, to the entertainment industry, where you see a lot of people who are flourishing because they have family, they have generational supporting them, and then you have people like me who just had to kind of like make it work. And luckily I had already come out off a year of essential poverty, so I already knew how to like eat a lot of ramen and mac and cheese, and and take that time to get my momentum. Obviously now, for the past, okay, I've been out here since 2014, so the first couple years for sure it was like being on a strict budget, which I learned and maintained when I was in AmeriCorps, and that really helped, right? I had lower, I don't know, I didn't have a big lifestyle creep or anything like that. And now I'm more established in my career, and that's not a stress point for me. So,
Right.
so it definitely set me up with the skill set of I already knew how to make things work, right? Like I said earlier with the scrappiness, like, the great thing about the film industry is if you're on set, you have craft services, you have catered meals, or when I wasn't doing jobs that were set related and I was working at like at NBC Universal, there's executives, there's people who don't know anything about, actually making stuff, but they're like the finance team, right? They're the executives. They would have like big, like meetings, and they would get like catered sandwiches, and I'd definitely be like, let me put these in my lunch bag and take them home.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And I had obviously been doing that in AmeriCorps. Anytime my team, statewide, we would meet up in Lansing, right, at the state capitol, and we do the full, like, it was all the teams in Michigan, it was all the members in the state. There was always catering, and I would always take a bunch of food back to Grand Rapids with me. Just learn how to make things work for you. And I think that attitude and that resourcefulness helped me segue really well into the entertainment industry, because you're working long hours when you're low on the low end of a crew where you're a production assistant, you are also making like $14 an hour. So you you eat the snacks in the kitchen at work.
Yeah. Well, I think your story is so fun to bring to light and to highlight, where, you just don't know what national service, where it's going to take you and how it's going to support your career, what you're going to learn out of it. And the majority of the interviews and conversations that I'm having is that, like, some people intentionally went into AmeriCorps, like you were looking for an opportunity. I had no idea I was going into AmeriCorps. I thought I was applying for a job. I didn't know why I was doing this training with all these other people. But obviously it has served me well, and I can all of it, check all the boxes of how it's served my career. But I think your story and where you are now is just a really cool example of, you knew what you wanted to do. You also wanted to serve in AmeriCorps, and you made it work. So as we are thinking about, we're about 1.2 million strong of alumni. So that's a lot of us across the country, and coming up here soon, I have an interview with an AmeriCorps alumni who's actually in Germany. So we're everywhere. We served in the United States or in the territories, which, by the way, folks, if you're thinking about a service year, you can serve in Hawaii, you can serve in Puerto Rico, you can serve in Guam. So check out those opportunities as well. What do you think? What could we do as a huge alumni base? Like, if the sky's the limit, like, I don't know, what would you think that, like, we could collectively come together and be a voice for something, or an example of something? I don't know, what could you pull together with that?
I mean, it's a tough call because we're so spread out and we're not a monolith, right? Like, we all have different values, even though we love service.
Oh no, did I lose it? Oh, there you go. You paused for a second. You said,
Oh,
even though we're not a monolith, we have different values. And then you
okay.
paused very beautifully, though, by the way.
Oh, thank you. No, I would say, I think, and we talked about this previously. I really think the thing we need to focus on is creating a space for alumni to come together, even before we're all physically together. Like, right now, I think when I first got out of my term, there were websites with subgroups, and when I moved to LA, I looked for the Los Angeles alumni group, thinking, oh, I need to put down roots. I need to make friends. How can I make friends? Oh, let me see if there's AmeriCorps alum around here. But as you know, those websites are largely inactive. And I think we really need to focus on, especially in 2023, creating a stronger like internet presence for us, whether it's like, I would probably get away from Facebook groups because a lot of people are straying away from Facebook, but just something where there can be, an overarching alumni network, and then groups, right? You can find your city group, and then have, build in, I don't know if it's Discord or something like that, like where you have your state. You can find folks from your service. You can find mentors. I think there's a lot of us who would be happy to mentor. I actually accidentally fell into mentorship after I moved to LA. When I was working at the NBC Universal is really good about giving back to the community. And there were a lot of city year folks who got brought onto the lot one day for like a luncheon to learn about other, what working in the industry is like. And I went and like just volunteered some time to answer questions. And there was a girl there who was serving in city year, and she ended up being from Michigan. And then we just like exchanged numbers. And she was like 19 at the time, and we just like kept chatting, and like she would reach out to me during the hardships of her year or things that challenged her and stuff. And she's now married and like living her life. So it's just, I think building that network is probably what we need to focus on, because after your service term ends, what's next for you? I
Mm-hmm.
am very lucky because I'm ambitious. I knew I was going to move to LA and I was going to pursue my career. However, so a lot of people do AmeriCorps because they feel lost. They feel like they're at a crossroads and they might not necessarily know what they want to do next. And being
Mm-hmm.
able to tap into, oh, I'm in DC, let me tap into the DC network, and there's alum here, and there's, there could be alum who are hiring, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
always want
Yeah.
to, hire other folks because we know if they can handle AmeriCorps, they can probably handle anything,
Yeah.
and I think that would be so great, right? Like I would love to connect with other members. I'm still in touch with a lot of people from my term, and my former director. And we're,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, we're like 1.2 million strong.
Yeah.
Some people I'm sure have moved on, but I think there's probably a good amount of us that would love to stay in touch.
Well, from the responses that I received in LinkedIn back in November of 2022, where I was just like, would anybody be interested in like
Yeah.
jumping on a podcast and talking about their experience? And I received like 115 like responses back that was like, this is a big hell yes. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this needs to happen then. And that was part of, I've been wanting to connect with AmeriCorps members in this way, an AmeriCorps alum in this way for, well, when I was back at Volunteer Maryland in 2017, I was listening to podcasts before it was easy to listen to podcasts. Like you had to download them. They took up a bunch of space. There was like Apple Podcasts didn't really work that well. And so I just knew that this was a space that I really wanted to be in, for my own personal wanting to get to know other people and learn about the service year. But there is definitely a ringing of just about every interview that I have that people really want to connect with AmeriCorps alumni in their area. And also to your point about like, look to the network when you have opportunities for employment or professional development or training or service project, right? Like I interviewed back in, I think March, Brittany, and I don't remember her last name, but she works for the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation nationwide. And, they have fundraisers and projects all over the country. And for her to be able to tap into our alumni group to support, we might not all have a calling to support multiple sclerosis, but heck, if she needed something done here in Maryland, I would certainly support the project because she did AmeriCorps, so therefore she is my kin, like forever and ever. So I love what you're saying, and I'm hoping that through these virtual conversations that we can start to have some pop-ups in regional areas, and I would love to kick off a mentor program. That would be something that would be super cool. And now that we can use virtual options if we need to, like you could mentor somebody in Michigan, you know what I mean? Just to have that connection of somebody who feels like heard and seen, because I can imagine like for them to connect with somebody in a different area might not feel the same. So I love what you're saying. And then my last question is, sorry, my cat is sitting right next to me and she just sneezed and scared me. You can't see her because I have a virtual background on, but like, where do you see yourself? What are your, you had mentioned that you're ambitious, and what are things that you want to accomplish, and where do you think we could see you in the next couple of years?
Oh man. I for me personally, of course, like I hope that I have some features I've written and directed that you can see in the movie theater. And that may be 4 years off at least. I feel like coming out of the pandemic, not that it's over, but now that we're kind of back to business, things kind of took a pause for a couple of years, but I'm hoping to gain more momentum of my creative side. I love I love working at Netflix, but I'm a freelancer, so I might not be at Netflix next time we chat. You move around a lot, you move to other projects, but ultimately, for sure, I would love to release some of my own material, And
we'll be at your premiere.
oh,
We'll
I
have a
would
big,
love
we'll have a
that.
big like AmeriCorps. We'll have the previous logo and the new logo, and we'll be like, we are supporters.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, for sure.
Sundance all the way.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely focusing on that. And then I think just traveling more, I think something that I'm sure a lot of alum and active service members have is just like a thirst for seeing the world and seeing other cultures and like being, I don't know, invested in the world around you, right? Like it's a big commitment, and I want to travel more, and I want to see more things, and not just like the beautiful stuff. There's things out there that we should all see and know what's going on. So traveling, telling more stories, making more things. I don't know, I'd like to get a dog.
You mean you didn't get one during the pandemic along with so many other people?
No, I have a very needy cat who came to us pre-pandemic, and I don't think he would like to share the spotlight.
Just yet.
Yet.
All right. Well, that's great. Well, is there anything else that you would like us to share or know that we have to know before we close out?
No, I don't know. Let your listeners know they're always welcome to reach out to me. I know you and I've talked. I would love to be a part of us building this network for alumni.
Right.
They exist. I also know a lot of other people who might want to be interviewed. So
yeah, send them my way.
I'm still very much in touch with my service cohorts. No, I just know that the challenges that come with a service here are very valid. It's very stressful. It's very emotional. You're being asked to take on the emotional labor of people you might not ever meet. And you have to do it while making minimum wage and balancing your life and doing additional service projects and keeping the peace at your site, because not every site is actually cares about developing their service member. Some of them just want the extra labor. That's all valid, and know that the challenge, if you can if you can get through your service term, you can pretty much get through anything. I stand by that. There were times where I took a nap in my car during my lunch break because I was so exhausted from working multiple jobs and making it work. And, now I'm, 14-year-old me would be really proud to hear that I'm like making it in Hollywood. So,
yes, I love that.
just I don't know, like take the year as a learning experience and know. And I also, here's my advice: tell your friends and your family what you're doing and that you're not making any money. I was so incredibly blessed to that when I started my term, I told my friends, hey, I'm getting paid like $4 an hour. I'm not going to be able to go out. I'm not going to be able to see movies. We can't go out, and get dinner. And I had really great friends who would invite me out and they'd pay for my beer, or we would, hang out at their
Find
house.
something else to do. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like when you set those expectations with your support network, they're going to support you in the way you need them to. So I think that's a big thing too. Communicate with those around you that your lifestyle might be changing for the next year so that you can do this.
That was so great. Thank you so much, Angie. And I love my 14-year-old me would love to know that I made it out here in Hollywood. That's great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in and listening. And like I always say, as soon as I can wrangle another AmeriCorps alum to get on here and have a conversation with me, you'll have another podcast posted. So in the meantime, enjoy. And since it is Environmental Month, get outside, do something to give back to your community or to our planet. So thanks so much and see you soon. Thanks, Angie.
Bye.